DevOps added our ability to herd the cats, right? We really had to get away from having 30 people on a call, off hours, late nights, running long, and trying to manually deploy code that we got from somewhere, right? From Lysander, or from one of Lysander's teams.
Forgot his libraries.
Forgot his piece.
I think the thing that we struggle with is, as developers, we don't think about what the end state is going to look like. When we move this application to production, what is it really going to look like? We're on our little laptops and we're banging away and making things, right? And because we don't always look at the bigger picture or think about our, the non-functional requirements, those are missed. So we're focused on, the business needs to do these 4 things. They need a blue button that takes this data, moves it from here, performs some calculations, and stores it here. So we do that, and usually we do it relatively well, but we don't ask the question, well, how many people are going to click that blue button in an hour? We might assume that, 5 people are going to click it, when the reality is our marketing folks have done a great job, and 5 million people are clicking that blue button. And when it gets to prod, it falls over, right? Assuming that we actually get to prod on time.
Well, rewind that whole story. You go back to NFRs, talk about just the functional requirements on top of that, and whether we missed considerations for architecture, which is a big thing. Making sure we're actually designing what we said we're going to design before we start fingers to keyboard and start banging away and building something.
I thought we started there. We just started building stuff, and he starts.
Well, sometimes that does happen, right? I mean, somebody's got a great idea. They run and grab a developer, and they start doing stuff, right?
How does DevOps fit into this? I mean, the way it used to always be is that the 2 of us would have to go out in the back alley and brawl out and figure out how we were going to deploy the software. And most of the deployments, like the project that we spent the last 2 years on, was a very manual process. Mm-hmm. So that Lysander built his code based on whether he had requirements or not, blue buttons or not. Usually you have to make the button red, not blue. And then I go and try to install it. Maybe I have a nice development environment. Maybe I have just one prod. But what story brought us to adding DevOps to the mix? I mean, leaving your architecture hat off, because nobody wants architecture anyway. But what did DevOps add to that?
DevOps added our ability to herd the cats, right? We really had to get away from having 30 people on a call, off hours, late nights, running long, and trying to manually deploy code that we got from somewhere, right? From Lysander, or from one of Lysander's teams.
Forgot his libraries.
Forgot his
pieces.
Well, not only that, but I mean, how did we solve the problem of, it works on my machine, but it doesn't work anywhere else?
Consistency. The idea of being able to deploy things in a similar fashion through a repeatable process anywhere and everywhere is going to help reduce a lot of those different types of challenges. Yes, you need the identical environments, or at least vastly similar environments where you're deploying the code to. But I mean, look where we started. We started with how many people, tens of people on a call every Friday night, every weekend, where for the first 2 hours of that time was spent manually backing up files, copying files, getting these files that we're the new application code that we're looking to deploy from somewhere, your email, my email, SharePoint, whatever, and not from a code repository of any kind or any kind of package library where we could pull from, so we're confident of the build that we're actually going to be deploying. It was fairly random, and it was from the application level down through the database components, as well as stored procedures and the like. And everything was supposed to come together in one harmonious act of deployment, so that by the time we were done with all of our manual activities and QA came in and started clicking buttons to test it, it just worked. But it didn't just work, right? It was a fallacy. And
it took smart people and middle of the night brute force to make it work. And a lot of times, unfortunately, you didn't learn from that, because you don't actually know all the things that you did, because 30 people on the call are all flipping switches places to try to make it work. And you eventually get there, but it runs long, it's hard, and it's not repeatable.
Absolutely. The repeatable part is the biggest thing. We've done these, we've done these deployments week in, week out, and they change from week to week, even if it's the same application or the same people on the phone. We've done something different because we haven't scripted these things, or automated these things, we're manually clicking buttons, and maybe we swap some people out for different roles or whatever, but the process is never the same. It's never guaranteed to be the same. So we're never assured of a consistent delivery in any of the things that we're trying to do when we're trying to deploy our applications. So,
I mean, you said weekly or every other week, but when you have the 30 people on the call and it takes all night, you're not doing it at that frequency because it's so hard.
yeah.
You wait until you got so much stuff to do to make your life even harder.
True. We ended up batching it up because of the length, the amount of time it took to actually get these things deployed, and our confidence in that deployment process. Right. If we spent one weekend where it took longer than usual to get something working, and we didn't have to do any kind of rollback, and we pushed through and we got it working, we're not going to be as likely to want to do this again the following week, go through that same process and put your people through that. So, from that DevOps perspective, we look at how can we make improvements to this very, very brittle, very manual, very non-repeatable process. How can we make this better? So we start bringing into some of those DevOps concepts of, what are our pain points? How can we eliminate all of the people on the call, or a large number of the people on the call? What are some of the inefficiencies that we're experiencing just through all of these manual copies? Where is my production code coming from? Where am I deploying? Where am I getting the application that I want to be in production? And did I deploy that same build version across all of my environments leading up to production as well? We could never guarantee that before. So,
So where did that inconsistency come from? Did it come from the environments as I build them up manually, or from his developers copying code off their laptop? I mean, we each have our role in making that mess.
True. If I look at the environments as let's assume they're consistent. Let's assume my dev all the way up through production are the same. And I just focus on the application and that deployment aspect, and the database side too. Where did I get my code? Where is all of my application code that I've been working on from a development, back in the development environment with all my development teams that I'm going to commit to source control, build, and then deploy throughout my life cycle? Where is that? Today, in the manual process, or before we had before DevOps, we didn't know where that was coming from, right? It was coming through emails and various other means or mechanisms where we were never sure of what we were getting. Maybe I was getting a copy from developer A's laptop and developer B's the next time, as opposed to something like a Git repository. So one of the first things that we actually did was, let's make this consistent. We are always going to deploy code from source control. Right, here's our source of truth. We agree to that, and that is what we build. That's what we deploy. And now, how do we build it? We build it in this manner. How do we deploy it? We deploy it in this manner. Where do we deploy it? We deploy it to here, here, and here throughout the life cycle. We make all of those things consistent and repeatable, and we can do it over and over and over again, and do so in a manner that we can build and deploy any version of the code that we want to. And now we're set up for a much greater chance of success with a greater frequency.
So from the development standpoint, I mean, back in the client server days or mainframes where some of us started from, what's the evolution that the development world has gone through?
And the thing that we're trying to do now is go faster, right? We want to deliver value to our end users faster. Back, when I first started projects, if it was a 6-month or a year-long project, end users didn't see value typically until you got into that last 25%. Whereas now, when I work with my teams, I want to see us delivering something to our production environments every 2 weeks. Now, in doing that, you aren't necessarily, the value that you're delivering initially may not be usable by the end user, but we want to develop the habit of whatever we build, we release. And in doing so, you're going to catch defects sooner in the process, again, if things are going well. And you start to build that habit of, let's take our problem, shrink it down into smaller bite-sized pieces, figure out how do we get those pieces in front of our users in a usable way sooner in the process. And then once they can start using it sooner in the process, you take that feedback, because they're going to say, thumbs up, you hit the nail on the head, or no, this isn't quite right, you need to course correct. And that gives us the ability to course correct sooner.